Hi, Nitin. Hi, Ankit. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hey Ashu,
Hey
good to have
Ashu,
you.
thanks for inviting.
I have had the privilege of knowing the two of you from very very early days of
Oh yeah,
starting out, right? I
yeah,
think right at the
yeah,
inception level, right? And I
yeah,
was sincerely looking forward to this conversation. I mean, given that you guys have built a fantastic business, right, and which has largely been bootstrapped, I think there are so many questions that I had, around the possibility of going bootstrap, right, building a bootstrap business, and so many other facets that are around. Optimization when you're building a business in a limited resource environment, right? But before we start that, why don't we have a quick round of introduction from the both of you? Ankit, we go with you. If you
sure,
could take us through your professional career and your and setting up MyOperator, and then we
sure,
come to Nitin.
sure. Thanks Ashu. So I did my engineering from BID Mestra and passed out in 2009. I was bitten by this entrepreneurship bug in the college itself. I was also the co-founder of entrepreneurship cell in the college. So 2007-8, when entrepreneurship wasn't really the buzzword, it was back then. We got this idea that this is something we want to do further. Uh, I worked for a startup just after college. I decided not to go for campus placements and join away. I joined a startup, early stage startup, and worked there for 1.5 year because I felt like if I have to start my own, it's better to start working with a startup. And then quit over there. Came to Delhi to start this venture. The initial idea was different, but it quickly failed even. And at the same time, we had to sustain ourselves. I was renting an apartment in Delhi, and hence had to pay out rents and etc. So I started doing some sort of services to sustain myself. And it was when we were doing the services, this idea came because we were like 5-6 people team doing services, and it was hard to manage customer service and sales process. And we always used to hear some of the customer complaining that, oh, your sales team is not picking up call, your customer support is not picking up call. And then we were like, how companies manage this, how do small business generally do it? And we started talking to a few of the people I knew, and I saw this was a problem everywhere. And we felt that the technology that we were already working on is actually relevant, and this is a real problem which as a company we weren't facing. And then we decided to build this as a MVP. We launched MVP in 2013. I remember that was the time when I first met you, Ashu.
Yes.
2013 it was. And we launched the MVP. We started going and talking to customers. A very, very good part was uh, we had 15 customers before even the MVP was launched.
Wow.
And the moment the MVP was launched, the same month we had another set of 15 paying customers. So it was very confident for us that, oh, we're on the right track. We're building something which is a problem there. How do a small business or a business improve on the sales and support process? It's a communication, and 80% of communication in India happens over phone, and there was
Right.
nothing to manage calls as a communication. So how do a small business or a mid-sized business really can improve their sales or support process? That was the idea which it came in. As this was the problem that we are addressing, we were quickly able to scale, and we scaled to a few hundred customers easily. We started getting revenue, and then we realized this is something big, and we
Right.
have to now redesign everything as a full-fledged thing. So we started developing the software again from the scratch. We had more funds coming in, so we could invest and hire team members and can build it. So initially it took like almost 2013 to 2015, like 2 years of time to rebuild this from the scratch. But it was considering that we have to take this for years to come.
Right.
And that was a good decision. 2015 when we launched, we already had like around 300-400 customers, paying customers with us, and very clear that it is a problem that we are solving. We were very clear about it. And 2015, it was easier for us to scale when we launched the full-fledged product and start, pushing up things. And we kept on building a team around it. We kept on increasing the product and its reach, etc. We kept on reaching out to customers. So currently, we do have around 7,000 businesses as customers across India, and
Wow.
we are a team of around 150 people, and all bootstrapped. So this has been the journey, and definitely a roller coaster ride, but definitely an amazing one. That
It
is it.
intrigues me. It intrigues me. There are a bunch of questions that I have, right? And I think we're going to cover that as we go along. Nitin,
Sure.
I have known you from very very early times, right? When EasyLeadz had a different name, it had a different appeal, packaging, positioning, all of that, right? why don't you take us through your journey? You've been all across, right? You've been a robotics guy, and from that building your own startup. Just take us through the journey.
Right. So, I mean, born in a small town, Karnal, the whole childhood went into building cool, I would say electronic gadgets or products. So
Right,
that was so I even had a lab at my home. I would say lab because that felt good in a way. So a small corner wherein I put up curtains and do all kind of robotic and geek stuff. Even, dug a hole in a barren land, trying to create my own Dexter laboratory. So that was the kind of childhood wherein I am more fascinated about building cool robotic geek stuff.
right,
And finally, landing up doing engineering in mechanical, and then doing a job in robotics company, selling and building cool robotic manufacturing lines in different companies. So trying to automate the world. So that was the kind of job I was working on. And then eventually I went on to do my MBA because I wanted to do it from IIT Delhi for a specific reason, because all of the big entrepreneurs, Flipkart, all of these cool companies are coming out of IIT Delhi.
right,
So I thought, go there where entrepreneurship is booming up. So, maybe I'll learn something, and maybe I'll, figure out how I can start my own journey. So that's when I started to, do MBA. And then that's when I started my first company, which was Get My Looks, way before even you met me. So that
right,
was the first company, the kind of company which Urban Clap is doing now. So we were way before Urban Clap came into picture, and we
right,
were doing exactly the same thing, but destiny. And then we finally shut it off for various reasons, and then eventually started doing the second company, which is Sponsify Me. So that's when I met you. The Sponsify Me was basically connecting brand managers to event managers.
right,
And the problem that I faced was basically the same problem I faced when I was in MBA, doing different conferences, inviting a lot of people to host conference series. So I had a hard time raising sponsorship. So I thought,
right,
why not create a marketplace wherein we can connect brand managers with event managers, and merge them together on online. But so one fine day we were obviously trying to scale up, figuring out how we can create more sustainable business model, and we wanted to reach out to more brand managers as a
right,
part of the outreach to scale up our own second company, Sponsify Me. That's when we landed up, I would say, accidentally on a business model, which is EasyLeadz, the final company. It came out of the second company just as a hack. So the intention was not to create that company. So we were just trying to create some and get some data for brand managers. And we were thinking, we can't afford to pay for data. I mean, obviously we don't have money. So how can we get some more data and reach out to brand managers? So that's when Amit, who is the co-founder, we created a small application for crowdsourcing contacts all over the world. So we will create a free application where people can contribute their data, and they get back the same kind of data from the central repository. And it hit it off very well. In a week, we got around 350,000 data points. We got around 1,000 users for free. And we were like, this is insane. Like, let's try to build that, because this is something which is going crazy. So that's when finally the EasyLeadz company happened, and we entered into the field of data, and how we can, create it. And since then, I mean, it's almost been 4.5 years now. We created a lot of different products, but eventually the one product that hit it off for the Indian market has given us around 45,000 users now worldwide, and we're bootstrapping obviously. And it's been amazing, right? I mean, so many of products, so many of learnings from different market landscapes, like US versus India, how we can cater only to Indian customers, because we have to crib down so much of complex products, and simplify it, because the local audience understand more simpler versions of the product. So I would say they're not much excited around the complexity of the sales architecture. So we have to crib it down to a level wherein the local audience will appreciate it more. So that has been the journey so far.
It's heartening to hear this, right? I mean, it's heartening to hear this. I've I've seen you very, very closely in the early days, right? And I know the challenges that you've been through as an entrepreneur. But I think between Ankit and Nitin, I think one thing which has stood out is the gumption, right? Is to keep going. And I think that's something which it's so heartening to see the results that have come out, right? Guys, as we dive into the conversation, right? I mean, my conversations today start with the point that 2020 has been a very unreal year, right? It's a year which is really changed how we're going to consume as as humans, right? A lot of it is in a year which sort of has disrupted everything that we've developed in the last 100 years, right? Uh, for companies that have been bootstrapped, right, one of the biggest pain points has been to go out and acquire a customer, right? Because the customer is set in his or her own ways, right? They're not necessarily looking at a new solution. Change is something that they're not very open to. Especially when you're sending in an enterprise environment, right, which most of you, with both of you are. It's very difficult because there are multiple decision makers, right? And then happened 2020, all of us had, right? Nobody anticipated it. We weren't prepared for it. It happened, right? And and nobody had a choice but to sort of look for solutions that were that could have helped them deliver better, right? My question is, how has 2020 been for the both of you? And what do you think as a macro, what has it changed forever, right? What is it that you grappled with before, say, 2020, and it's paved the way for your businesses and businesses that are say selling an enterprise space, bootstrapped. What does it change them forever? Change for them forever.
So,
Ankit.
I think both of us will agree, from a digital perspective, there was no 2021. We just reached to 2025 as a digital acceleration. What we could have imagined in next half a decade of time, it was just done in 1 year of time. 2020, with all the odds, all the bad thing, that this COVID has brought in, it has given us this super speed acceleration, in the digital world. For us as a MyOperator, the when it all started last year March, it was really a very baffled situation. We didn't understand what to do. What is happening and how do we deal with it. The first thing we remember was there was a lockdown happening, and I was not sure how this will react. And when the lockdown happened, the first thing that got our attention was there was a series of sectors which got badly impacted, like hospitality, travel, etc. And we saw clear dry revenue from there. There was absolutely no revenue coming from those sectors. It definitely hit the initial 2 months, but then there was a silver lining to it. There was the whole acceleration, the COVID thing, and this was happening super fast. This was happening. A lot of new sectors were emerging. A lot of businesses who were earlier cynic about adopting such cloud technologies were adopting it. There were no comparison now with any traditional EPBX system or any traditional on-premise system. That was completely gone away. And we just in few months of lockdown happened, we clearly saw there is a clear upward growth happening. Though 2021, that initial damage was definitely there, but the whole upward trend is actually helping us even today. Even today, if we see there is a clear upward trajectory because of this digital adoption, especially in SMBs. Earlier, SMBs were not sure if they want to adopt cloud as a technology. That was they were concerned about maybe security. They were concerned about not holding the data on their premise. They were concerned about finding some cheap on hosted hardware alternatives. But now those have gone away. People have understood clearly that we need some cloud based solution to run the business. And the advantage of the cloud based systems are, a lot of businesses, because they were traditionally not using that, there was an initial friction. But once they have started using it, they can never go back to the traditional system. And that is what going to be happening in this segment. So I think with the roller coaster ride, there is a clear upward trajectory that this whole COVID has given us. Yeah.
Right.
Nitin, your thoughts.
Sure. So I mean, for us also, we launched our latest product on the 1st of January of 2020. And obviously we're not expecting anything till March, as we all know that lockdown would happen, or COVID is gonna come and hit us. But
Right.
our product eventually is solving a problem of the salespeople. So when lockdown happened, all the sales, everything went down crazily. It basically became zero for all the companies, and that actually has become a boon for us, I would say. Fortunately for us, since every company is facing sales challenges, So our product become very, very handy and has been become a, I would say a great painkiller for all the companies who are facing the issues of sales or how they can, increase their sales. So since because of all of that, our adoption has been, really, really exponential. Like we went from one user in January to 45,000 users now as we speak, or I should say just from the single product, $0 in MRR in January last year to $60,000 in MRR this year as we're speaking. So, and that too without investing any money in advertising or marketing. So I would say it's more about the pain that the company is facing, and since the businesses everywhere are facing the problem of sales and revenue uplift, everyone had to adopt something which is going to help them improve their sales process, and not just for momentarily reasons, but going to have a mindset shift from how they can do it more, persistently. Like before the COVID era, field sales was something like, now you can't even imagine what a field sales will look like. There is
Right.
no walk-in. You can't go in a company and try to meet someone. There is no one is sitting in companies anymore. You can't go and meet people. So you have to adopt something which is going to give you a digital channel, or are going to give you inroad without actually hitting the company boardline numbers. So that's where the product like us come in handy, and that's why the adoption is going very, very differently and amazingly well for us.
Very interesting, guys. What you have not answered is, how has it changed, right? I mean, what I understand is that a lot of enterprises came looking for a lot of this, right? I mean, when we spoke about enterprise sales, right? And I have done that with a lot of startups. The biggest of all challenges is in adoption, right? Is the bureaucracy that runs in enterprises, irrespective of whether it's a private enterprise or whatever, right? There
Right.
is no one decision maker, right? Nobody wants to stand out and say that, listen, this is the product that you need to buy, right? It's people are constantly shifting, right? Everybody knows that in enterprise it's a very long sales cycle, right?
Right.
While the both of you have spoken about the increase in adoption and how the market has changed, right? I want to hear in terms of how has the sales cycle changed for the both of you,
Sure.
post 2020, right? How was it before it, and how has it shifted, or what's happened post 2020?
So I'll take one example, and then Ankit, you can take over.
Yeah.
Uh, So, so one shift that I've observed is that people do not now expect you to come and give demo anymore. So
Okay.
that has been the case. Like when I remember specifically a company which is an enterprise company. Before March 2020, I really had to go and give them at least 5 walk-ins, and go to their place and meet them up.
Right.
And I always am kind of guy who believes in, if we can do it over the phone or over the Zoom call, then there is no need. I actually
Right.
had a fight with this customer because he wanted us to come to their office and give them demo in person. I told
Right.
them we do it on Zoom call because there is no really need to, travel anymore. And why do we want to do that? And that was
Right.
before COVID hit us.
Right.
And now the same customer is, signing up deals with us without any walk-ins, without any demo anymore. And that's not just one customer I'm talking about. I'm talking about all the biggies, Microsoft, Amazon, all the biggies of the world. They don't expect you to do any more kind of walk-ins or demo. They always expect you to just go digital on everything. The culture has been shifted from that kind of field sales or that kind of requirements wherein you have to meet physically and do things, to a digital scenario wherein you don't really have to. And it's not a momentarily shift, I would say. It's a cultural shift that happens suddenly. It's like a switch of a button, that
Right.
it will always remain it like this now from going forward, that people have now understood that you can actually save time on all these things that were not needed at all. You can
Right.
do that, have the productivity improved a lot, and that's what the shift is going to happen.
Amazing, Ankit.
Yeah, so our observation is very similar to what Nitin said. With especially large enterprises, there was a set of norm. They used to expect that you will come and meet and physically show the demo. Though for a tech platform like both of us, it was nothing like we can additionally add value when we meet physically. It's everything online.
Right.
But there was a cultural, gap here. Which you can see. They would expect something like an on-premise system. You come and show us the physical demo, where we would always be insisting on why can't it be done online. But now that decision making, even if you see it's a digital transformation or the acceleration that I was
Right.
talking about, that actually gone away, and that has done the deeper cultural change. Now the expectations in business that you'd physically come and show me demo has gone away, and that clearly reduced the sales cycle. For us, it's like reduction by 40%.
Wow.
Because the entire time to schedule a meeting has gone away. It's not just a calendar request anymore.
Right.
And that's definitely helping all the digital business in that sense, because to approach enterprise business, you do not have to be present physically in those locations. Number one, you do not have to schedule a lot of appointments and wait for meetings over there, and the entire sales cycle is low. At the same time, if you're solving a core problem, the decision making is itself faster, because this is a time of crisis and businesses would want to solve important things first. And any platform like both of us would definitely get benefited out of it.
Fantastic.
So I'll add
okay.
numbers to it, just to add a number. So if before COVID we had to sell, let's say $3,000 worth of sales, we had to give at least 2-3 demos, or maybe at least 1 or 2 meetings in the physical presence. Now if you do 3,000, and it will take around a month to close it, right? Now if you have to sell $3,000, it usually takes not more than 2 or 3 days without any demos. At max, just 1 phone call. That scenario from that day to now.
Wow, that's amazing. Guys, while I would have wanted this to be a deeper conversation about about MyOperator, your matrices, Ankit, or the EasyLeadz in terms of knowing your top customers, how they're using the product, and so forth, right? I think today's discussion is a little beyond that, right? I think today's discussion is really around the possibility of really sort of comprehending the DNA of building a a bootstrapped startup, right? Or a startup which has been built in a limited resource constrained environment, right? Because there were possibly people who had deeper questions. Money was something that people possibly felt that there were better avenues to give them an ROI and all of that, right? And I think those are some certain complexities around the topic, right? But what I want to understand really is, what's the bootstrap mindset, right? Both of you have done it for the longest time, right? Both of you have built some incredible organizations. These are profitable organizations. These are organizations with very, very large revenues that not a lot of, I wouldn't really say unicorns, but a lot of funded enterprises in a couple of $100 million cannot really talk about, right? I don't want to talk about the numbers right now. But I definitely want to understand the mindset, right? The both of you have really sort of optimized in that way, right? And unfortunately, in India, bootstrap startups are not, celebrated, right? I think there's a huge celebration that needs to happen around startups that are growing, are profitable, acquiring customers, delivering world-class service without necessarily, raising capital early on. There is always a possibility, but I think are choosing to sort of continue to operate in a certain way, right? So tell me more about what are your thoughts around on building a bootstrap mindset? What's the difference?
See, if you ask me, what is a bootstrap mindset? It's about getting the fundamentals strong and right.
Right.
It's what are the fundamentals, like unit economics, like getting maximum utilization of the resource that you have. These are the key elements. If you have money or if you do not have money, you have to get it right. Additional money can help you scale, but core fundamentals has to be there. You bootstrap or not, it has to be strongly done. And often you see, if you bootstrap for a certain amount of years, it will help you get your fundamentals corrected, get your unit economics corrected, get your strategies corrected, etc. And this would help, even help if some company want to raise fund after a certain year of time. It's clearly going to help, because they'll have a fundamental stronger strategy around it. And these are often seen as a very two different route, and it is not. It is like very similar. You just try to find best of it. You sometimes prioritize scaling over optimization. Sometimes prioritize, when you bootstrap, you prioritize optimization over scaling faster. But trust me, going bootstrap is not going slow. Often this is seen as that you bootstrapping, which means you're going slow. It's not that really. You just have to find better strategy adopting to that, and that's the whole game about. I think, over the years, that I've been able to bootstrap, it helped me actually, correct a lot of fundamentals in there. What strategy I'm going to play, how I'm going to focus on customer, what's the niche I'm targeting, how I'm different from competitors, etc. These are very strategical questions which you have money or not, you have to answer anyway. And that's, that's an answer to what is a bootstrap mindset. It's clearly in one word, it's keeping the fundamentals strong. That is it.
Very interesting. Nitin.
Yeah, so I think, so I could be slightly wrong in this, but this is something, a pattern that I've observed. When it comes to a bootstrap company like us, the core thought process is, even if we acquire one customer, how we can retain that customer. It's not about focusing on the retention part, although obviously funded companies also do that, but their initial focus is always more about the acquisition and scaling up the parts. They try to acquire more and more customers, but however, on the other side, the focus on the building a great product and retaining them along with it is slightly on the future strategy part of them. Like first is to meet the numbers, go and push hard, spend money, and acquire more and more customers. If there are leaky buckets in the process, if more and more customers are falling off, that's okay. We will fix them up later as we go along. But for Bootstrap, it's the first and foremost thing that you do. You build a very superb, amazing product right at the beginning. Because you can't afford to lose even a single customer. And whatever you want to do in the long term, you basically try and do it right from the beginning. You can't afford to do it. And the other thing that we have observed, obviously, while building and scaling up, is that you try and focus on the acquisition, because you can't afford to lose or spend money on advertising and all those other channels. But you try and find unique ways from where you can acquire customer, which actually becomes your long-term acquisition strategy, which the funded companies try and implement later, like SEO. I just giving an example is that we built the SEO engine right in the beginning because we believe that's the only channel that will give us leads, or that's the only channel that will give up new signups. And now we get around 200 signups every day just from the SEO. But we have observed comparatively that when I talk to my friends who are into funded companies or building good funded companies, is that that's the SEO investment is something that they do 2 year, 3 year down the line, because that they focus initially on acquiring customers right from by spending money, while you can't afford to do that. So there are, I would say, maximization of resources, or whatever you want to do in the long term, you try and implement and do it right in the beginning in the bootstrap company.
Just to counter on that, I think what Nitin said, if I just go by that, I think we have been running more like a funded startup than a bootstrap startup. We have been putting in a lot of money in advertisement as well, and we have been prioritizing our GTM strategies over retention as well. I think and that's a beauty. There's no one answer about bootstrap. You can run it in multiple ways. We definitely tend to focus more on a growth aspect of it and then optimization aspect of it.
No, I think I have a counter question to what Nitin said, and I think Ankit, you partly answered that question, right? Is that Nitin? I mean, having the right product is so difficult, right? When you're out there, okay, unless you're solving for a very very micro problem, right? Unless you've really sort of concentrated on an extremely micro problem, saying that this is a problem that we're going to solve, right? In that scenario, it's definitely possible where you can come with a good product. Possibly your competition has not looked at that micro in a they've not spent time in sort of really dissecting that entire micro, right? But as soon as you start to scale for a slightly more larger visible problem, right? I think you don't really have that luxury. I mean, product development has to happen in the process, right? Which essentially means that you have to, have more people, at an engineering level, who are doing marketing, and there are like there's a team that is for the feedback, engaging with the customer success, so on and so forth, right? I mean, I'm saying that just becomes so much more complex as soon as you start catering for a slightly larger problem, right? Right. Which also brings me to my next question, right? Is that today now we've given that we've moved into a very digital environment, right? I mean, 2020 has done that, and especially in enterprise space, everybody who was selling has done phenomenally well. I mean, we've seen companies like Tubilio, which has existed for the longest time, and all of a sudden there was a huge excitement around funding of it. Airmeet has raised money. There are quite a few platforms that have raised money, right? And nobody thought that these are going to be very very interesting avenues, right? Because they were essentially extension to what exists in the physical world, right? But they've enticed money, right? Investors are extremely excited about it. They've grown phenomenally, right? The kind of ARRs that they're doing, are amazing, right? Everybody's excited about them in the entire ecosystem, right? Uh, do you think now that a large part of our country is moved digital, right? It will become important to be engaging with investors, raising capital to build your business to the next stage, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to be chasing the same set of customers, right? You will need more and more resources, right? There could be a possibility that the free capital or the free cash that you have on your sheet, it might not be enough to build further, right? You'll have to have a very superior engineering team. You'll have to have a very superior client engagement team, relationship team, and so on and so forth, right? And you'll have to do a variety of things, and not just say, for example, acquire on advertising, but have a partnerships team in place, and so on and so forth, right? Do you think it's going to become difficult or easy in an environment which is so much more transparent to build a bootstrap enterprise? While you are, say, chasing a bigger problem statement?
Sure. So I'll answer that first, Nitin. So Ashu, what generally when as an entrepreneur, I would have that scenario, and the first question I would ask myself is, do we have a right strategy to scale if we are able to raise funds?
Sure.
For quite some years, there were a lot of different difference in opinion about the market, how it's growing faster, etc. And how do we have a strategy to scale that rapidly? The one of the things
Right.
that investor would expect when they put in money is a very rapid growth, a blitz scaling happening.
Sure.
But not every company or probably at every time might be ready for that kind of blitz scaling. And
Right.
we saw, if you just pump in money in some business which is not ready for blitz scaling, it might again fail, easily. And for long, we have been kind of juggling on this argument that is it a right time, is it not, and etc. For us, it's having the right time and the right strategy around it. If you
Right.
have that strategy, that if I am able to raise fund and use that fund to immediately scale to a very next level, and my fundamentals are corrected, I think every business should go for and raise fund. That's the idea. But if you think it makes sense to run at a niche and focus on this as a lifestyle business and focus for it longer, you might choose to go as a bootstrap business. And it often would come with founders' aspirations. It often would
Right.
come with the market and the timing, etc. All put in together. A founder had to decide.
Sure.
Right.
Interesting.
Like,
Nitin?
Ankit also addressed this part, that strategy. So I mean, I often try and think about it. Obviously, we also get some offers on funding, but the only question that I had in mind is money the only thing that's stopping us from doing what we want to do in the next 3 months,
Right.
6 months, 12 months? If money is the only thing, then yes, it answers to me, partially in a way that yes, we can raise funds and do it. But if we know that we can scale it to what we want to do without raising funds or without
Right.
having other scenarios in mind, then we can always do it without that. So it's more question about what you already have in your hand, where
Right.
you want to go from that position to the next 12 months or 3 years down the line, and whether you need more resources, what kind of support you need from the ecosystem, what kind of growth mindset you have, whether you have good skill set in your existing team that can do what you are doing versus your competitor that have raised $100 million already. So it totally depends on the kind of product, kind of market you're existing in, and whether what you want to do from now to next 2 years. You can't do it without money, then you should definitely raise money.
Guys, I think while we're doing this discussion, right, I think Zerodha has been a bootstrap startup, right? And look at the kind of valuation.
Absolutely.
And look at the kind of valuation that it's enjoyed, right? And it's been, I completely resonate with your point, Nitin, right? And we also have a Nitin there, right? At Zerodha, right? And I think and I kind of hear you, right? Because when your cost of engineering is limited, right, but the possibility of revenue is so much higher, right? And you say have an existing customer base which can foot the bill of managing your say existing cost centers, maybe a 20-30% increment, right? And I think it's a very difficult situation to really sort of I think choose, right? That do you bring in somebody to to be a partner in that growth process, or do you continue to enjoy the autonomy that you had, right? And you continue to scale the way you have, right? And especially when you had those, the large customer base that you had, right? Who've enjoyed your service, there is a certain credibility that is established, right? It is just so much more difficult, right? And I think, like you said, there are no right or wrong answers around it. I think it's a function of the founder's aspiration in the process. Guys, my next question to the both of you is, and I'll have Nitin to answer this one first, Ankit. Is that creating a brand is something which takes forever, right? And when I say a brand, what I essentially mean is the trust behind the name that you built for the enterprise, right? And for the bootstrap startup, and like you said, right, pre 2020, right, 2020, 2019, people would still want you to come to their office, right? India has been a culturally, we've been a market where touch and feel is very, very important, right? Knowing the person behind the technology is always very important. Why don't you come in? Why don't you give us a demo? Knowing the person beyond it just work, right, at a personal level has always been part of the sales process, right, that we've had in the country. How difficult is it to create a brand when you are a bootstrap company, right? Because early phase of your growth journey is essentially very limiting, because there is the free cash flow in the company is much lesser than typically a company which is kind of funded, right? And and creating a brand, today in a digital ecosystem, people look for references, people look for a variety of things. I think you've answered that in a certain way where you said, we're focusing on SEO and stuff like that, right? But I mean, how challenging is that as a founder? How challenging is that to create that, that brand, that trust, especially in the early phase of your journey?
Right. So I think it starts from understanding the kind of audience you're catering to.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if we talk about Indian market, the most important, we are sensitive to pricing, we are sensitive to support, we need more hand holding. So if we do all of these things, we club it as a part of our support services. It gives out trust to the consumer or the user that the company is doing something great, the company is providing value. So what matters to the audience the most is something which translates to the product journey, which translates to the support journey, and then creates and adds value to you as a brand. First and foremost is when you push out something. So for example, if we say that we are going to do this for you as a user, you're going to get this X as a value. If you're not delivering that X as a value every time consistently, your brand is obviously going to fall apart. You're not getting that kind of confidence in the user that we claim to do this, but we can't actually do this persistently or 100% of the time. If you're hitting out 100% of the time, then you're obviously going to achieve that brand consciousness in the background of the mind of the consumer, that they do what they say. That's the first step. The second step, I believe, is is providing a very good, amazing support ecosystem around it.
Sure.
So if we look at our G2 rating, I'm just giving an example of how brand looks like, or how you rightly said that since everything is digital now, people look at all these research aspects available online before deciding whether they want to go forward with a company or subscribe to company services or not. So our G2 services, especially on this support, is actually hitting 9.8 out of 10. While the 100 million or $1 billion funded companies in the similar domain, their rating is around 8.2 or 8.4 at max. So our support is super, super critical to us, because India audience need instant hand holding and support. So we focus on that part more rather than flashy banners or flashy, I would say, UX. Obviously that's important too. But for us, we know that the Indian mindset needs more hand holding, needs more support. So we try and focus on that area which matters to them the most. So knowing your audience also helps you understand how you can create a long-term brand strategy. And yes, it is challenging, because obviously to providing long-term support, you need more resources. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation, that you need more support team members to provide more support. And in order to provide more support, you need more support team members. So you kind of have to, balance that out, and obviously, keep on building the good product which delivers on what it promises.
Right. Ankit.
Yep. So I'll just start with an example, and that this happened just day before. I was reading some internal communications on a chat group, So there was one salesperson, talking to his manager. He was writing in, we probably need to contact, more businesses, but we need, some platform like EasyLead. Can we have an account of EasyLead? And it was, then when I clearly understood, oh, Nitin is able to build a good brand around it.
Right.
See, building a brand can be done without, money in the first place. It need a lot of, again, strategic thinking, planning about it. What do your customer expect out of you? What do you need to deliver? How do you want them to imagine? In this case, the example I cited, it is clear in probably sales team mind, at least at MyOperator, and he wasn't probably aware even that me and Nitin are good friends, and he wasn't aware of that. But he knew that he need contacts, and EasyLead was the thing that came in mind. And this need just strategic, executional thing. Thanks to this digital time, if you see, brand building has become more easier than anything else.
Right.
What you need to be able to do is communicate yourself to your audience, to your customer base. Look, this is the value I'm providing, and this is how I'm doing. Talk about it. Talk about the problem. Talk to the customers. Talk about how you're solving this. And this is a lot easier to do. But being said that, I understand, to be able to scale that brand to probably a larger number of audience, you need a lot of capital to put in. But trust me, if you do that kind of capital investment, even without bootstrapping it for certain time, without realizing what is the core strategy which I need to, and strategy won't come in just with a click of idea or with a couple of maybe experiments. It needs some time to get on customers understanding and all. Trust me, Ashu, every 2 year I always feel like, oh, probably now I've learned who's my customer. And this get revised every 2 year, because this is
Right.
so complex as a problem. And we
Right.
cannot just imagine that someday, I started a new business, I raise fund, I know my customer, I can just quickly build a brand around it. It will definitely take years of time initially, which will help you. Money, when comes at that stage, will help you scale that faster, that core
Right.
fundamental about the branding.
Right. No, I think when Ankit, you are making your point and Nitin is making a point, in my mind, I'm just sort of I'm also sort of thinking, right? I think one thing which is extremely common, right? Between a founder who's kind of self-funded, bootstrapping his or her way, is that they're extremely vocal, right? They are the ones who are really carrying the brand on their shoulder, right? I've seen that Nitin. I've seen Nitin doing a lot of
Absolutely.
experiments, right? I'm a big fan of what Nitin Raman does, right? At Zerodha, right? He's extremely vocal, right? And what I see is, not a lot of funded startup founders are necessarily all that vocal, right? They are behind a certain facade, a little away from the limelight, and I think constantly in a zone where they're calibrating, right? Are we doing this right? Are we doing this wrong? And I think and when I say that, I have goosebumps, because it's just so much more difficult for a bootstrap founder, right? To be out there, and putting himself or herself for evaluation, right? Where there could be, negative comment that can come in right there, which could influence the entire, possibility that he or she is building around the product and stuff like that, right? It's just so much more difficult, right? But I think being out there brings in a certain sense of boldness. It brings in a certain sense of understanding the consumer, because you're dealing with a lot of those things firsthand. You're not necessarily in a in a remote environment where you are, as I said, calibrating your conversational to the market and stuff, right? And that is amazing, right? That fearlessness is very, very important, right? I think that is what you need when you have to create an entrepreneurial economy, right? You need a lot of fearless people who are willing to go out there and build large business, and who are more than willing to share, right? I think the other thing which is very common about self-funded startups is found they are willing to make their resources available. They are willing to sort of share those resources, right? And they're willing to handhold a lot of other people in the around them, right? Which is phenomenal. Guys, my next question is, how easy or difficult is it to have a global aspiration, right? When you are bootstrapping your way to building your business, right? How difficult or easy is it to have a global aspiration, or is it staged? Let me put it this way. Or you need to prioritize your market size.
Nitin, you going first?
Sure. So I mean, we actually have done this in a reverse way. So we started out with a global aspiration. started out with a product which actually was meeting more US market.
Right.
And then, but the targeting, we were doing it for the Indian market. So we kind of had a mix in that the product is more suited for the US market, but we obviously didn't have the resources to put us out there. And so we had to only, focus on the Indian market, but obviously the product was not suited for the Indian market. So we kind of, juggling in between those two areas, and we had to narrow it down and simplify the product for the Indian market. So the aspirations obviously are amazing, because for a SaaS founder, a SaaS company especially, the US and the developed markets are the more aspirational markets. There people understand instantly what SaaS means, versus the Indian culture, wherein the adaptability of software was not that great pre-COVID area. Now things are changing. People are going more and more digital. So I mean, aspiration wise, it's, you obviously wanted to go in the developed regions. We definitely have around 20% of the users currently as we speak from the global regions. But if you ask me, the focus as of now is more on the Indian region, because the product is more suited towards the Indian region. But having said that, you obviously need more resources and team, because their people want a very, very fine and finished and UI UX driven product. They don't really want a product which can solve the problem 100%, but it is not having that kind of user experience or feel, or have that kind of integrations from the different architectures available in the developed markets, because they like to do or use a full-fledged ready-made product rather than a product which is solving the problem but half baked in the appearance or the user experience. So in order to do that, you either wait for the few years to have that kind of money in the bootstrap region, so you save money, you build profitability, and then you try and invest that money to go global. Or if you want to go global right away from the beginning, then I would say you definitely need some funds to raise capital to do it in the global region.
Very interesting. Okay.
Yep. So with us, the journey has been slightly different. And we started with India as a primary market because this is the only market we understood. I, as an entrepreneur, understood. We started in India market, then started exploring other geographies, understood why US is not the thing we should be focusing upon, or European market, or North American market in general. Why we should not be focusing on that. There was a lot of cultural thing, how we design the product, our value that we are offering. We found it quite different. And hence for us, when we thought about like how do we go global, we started focusing on South Asian and Middle Eastern market first. And uh, uh, in Bootstrap, it's definitely a bit more challenging, because again, you have to take it slower. You cannot just invest money and quickly scale things over there. You have to gradually build team for each geography, scale it up, and etc. So we did, we started doing it a couple of years back, and we are still doing, a lot of experiments around it. We are seeing some early tractions, outside India as well. And I think, it's doable, but generally, my recommendation would be, any entrepreneur need to focus on one geography primarily, and then, find out relevant geographies and then scale over there. Trying something probably, in multiple geography at the start is always going to be challenging, because there's a cultural changes, your branding is different, your messaging is different, the value system is different, and hence it become much more difficult in a bootstrap stage.
Right. Very interesting. I think both of you have a very, very valid point there. Guys, when you are kind of building a business, right? The most complex piece is leadership, right? And I think that that entire the entire thing goes for it becomes 20x challenging, right? As soon as you choose to sort of operate in a in a self-funded way, right, or in a bootstrap way, right? And especially when you have, and I am essentially, what I mean is that there are a lot of companies that are getting funded and so on and so forth, right? And when you have brought in a lot of talent, right, and that talent is, and you've nurtured that talent, right? You've brought it up to speed, scale, understanding of the customer perspective. And they've been there, right, at a foundation level when you're building these, right? How difficult it gets, right? As soon as there is a competitor that gets funded, or or the person who's working with you gets an opportunity in a funded startup, or is tempted to sort of move on, right? Change base, right? How difficult is that for you as a leader? And I can only in my mind imagine how difficult would it be, right? I mean, this is something that you guys are handling firsthand, right? So would love to hear your perspective on this.
Ankit, I think you should take it because
Sure.
you've done that a lot than me.
Yeah. So with us, it happened a lot, really. You have seen our competitors getting funded, and then, it gives a sense of trouble to team. We see team members, joining for sub-funded startups and etc. This has been happening. But, the core question we ask internally is, do we think we can scale from here, based on the strategy that we have? And this is, this question not only remains to me as a founder, but we also scale it down to the team, every team member who understand what are we doing? Are we aligned to this or not? So if you see, our internal mission that we say, we help businesses do better sales and better service.
Right.
Now, my question is my team member aligned enough to probably bet on this idea and, probably invest personally and emotionally in this idea, or rather than he's probably looking out for some better opportunity, because there's a better paying thing. You'll find mix of people. You'll always find mix of people, and it always is fine. You'll lose certain people, you get more people who's more aligned to you, and that's a part and parcel. You run this way team. What you need to do or ensure as a founder is you create a good internal brand as well, and not just be an external brand. So this is where a founder need to balance a lot. There is an external branding and there is an internal branding. Externally, you talk about what you value you're adding to the your customers, but internally you tell about what is the vision, how are you heading it, are you competent enough to be able to take it to that level and all. So at the same time, being said that, if you see, the set of 8 core people, we still have 5 people who are like working with us for last 7 years now.
Right.
So they all have opportunities. I clearly understand they would probably they all find great opportunities in funded startups there. But I think those are the people who are aligned to this whole mission in the first place. They believe that we need to do what we're doing. It's something wonderful we have built. It's something great we have built, and we can scale it with the strategies that we're doing. And those kind of mission, those kind of internal branding actually helps entrepreneur sail through those kind of challenges.
Interesting. Ankit, I have a follow-up question on that. I'll just come to it in a bit, right? I'll have Nitin to answer. Nitin, what are your thoughts?
So in my cases, obviously my team is very small compared to what Ankit, team size looks like, or, I mean, the kind of time he has spent, thinking about competitors raising funds and all those areas. Right. In our case, luckily for us, those challenges have not been, have happened yet, because we fortunately are the only product, in India, especially that has this kind of capability doing what we do. Right. Outside, yes, there are definitely global competitors. Right. But since our focus is not much on the outside market, and their focus is not much on the Indian market, right. So those kind of conflicts are not yet arises. So those areas have not yet troubled us. Definitely, maybe in the future we have to worry about those. But if we keep on building a good product which is trying to solve problems, which the agility is something which always helps. Like I've seen what our competitors are doing with even $1 billion fundraise or 100 million fundraise. Some of them have recently done that in US. We have the same kind of product and technology with just 3 people in the team and 0 funding. So I mean, it's totally a mindset. I would say you can always do that if you have the kind of technical skill set, especially if you are a technical product, and you don't really need that kind of worry if you have the right set of skill set, at least in the initial team members that you want.
Interesting. I have a bunch of questions on that one, right, and certain observations as well. But I'll come to that towards the end of the conversation, right? Ankit, a little more personal, right? Does this kind of a movement in the teams? I mean, you've been there long enough, right? I understand Nitin's point, right? I mean, it's a much smaller engineering team that he's working with, and I think he's very pinpointed on cracking one particular problem, right? And I think here you are, who's trying to sort of solve for a slightly largest problem, right? There are a bunch of other products that are there. The team size is larger than what possibly he has to deal with, right? And you continue to manage it all throughout, right? Have you become bolder in the process, right? Have you become bolder in the process, right? Possibly started with a sense of insecurity, saying that this guy's leaving, that guy's leaving. I still need to have a very strong face to the audience, right? I can't lose it, right? I mean, I can't lose I can't be the duck, right? Who's who has to look calm on the outside and troubled inside, right? And I have to constantly be putting out a very, very strong facade internally and externally, right? How challenging is that?
Sure. So number one, it definitely has made me a lot bolder or stronger internally.
Right.
Because it's when you hear some team member who's worked with you for a few years and is leaving because is getting a better pay or much a better hike, or he's looking for some funded startup now. It definitely would hurt you, because you as a bootstrap business, you're not just connected with people as a professionally, you also build a good relation. And that's the reason, as I said, like a lot of people stayed with MyOperator. But at the same time, it hurts to see people going, and those things happening, it definitely make you stronger. And there are a lot of such scenarios where you have to take such bold decisions, such strong steps in the organization. You have to take calls, you have to ensure that team is continuously growing, and at that time those decisions are really tough ones, and which make you stronger. But more than this, making us stronger, two things that we have realized, personally I've realized that this whole process is making me a good person. Because what I've realized is you cannot build a good team if you're not a good person at deep, and you have to be vocal about it, vocal about things you're doing for the team, things trying to do as a company, things you believe in. You have to vocal internally as well, and communicate to the team, align team about this mission. That's what the leadership is all about. And that's probably I've learned over the years that what it really takes to be a decent leader in a team who can lead 150 180 people team, and still without raising money, he can keep everybody motivated. And this is one paraphrase which I use to kind of describe this scenario. And I always tell this, as an entrepreneur, we play a role of a joker. We play stunts, we do stunts, we keep on falling, but we stand up again for the next stunt. At the end, the purpose is to keep everybody entertained. And that's a reality about being an entrepreneur.
And the sales still has to happen, right?
Oh yeah, the show must go on.
Very interesting. I think there are so many questions that I and I can think of while I'm talking to the both of you, right? Do you guys sleep well? Thinking of the cash flow, or how are the early phases, right? Thinking of the cash flow, right? Given you don't have the comfort of we have some more money, right? We can commit somewhere else, right? How difficult is that decision making process?
Nitin?
Yeah. So luckily, I mean, for us, it's not much of a challenge, honestly, as of now. That cash flow has become a problem. So in our case, it's consistent. It's going very well. So
not right now. I'm sure there was a time, right?
Obviously, yes, we had that of the challenge that we can't even spare or hire one more resource. That means we have to obviously either cut another resource who is not that critical right now, or try and save some other costs which we are doing but we can afford to lose them off or cut them off. So those kind of challenges were definitely there, and that's the problem with the bootstrapping, right? They always push you down, and instead of worrying about the problems that the customers are facing, or how you can solve them problems of building good product and acquiring more and more users, you have to worry about these things also in the beginning. And that's always a challenge, which is why I kind of have shifted into more of a product-led growth mindset now.
Right.
That whatever I wanted to do, if I wanted to start a new experiment or build a new product, I always have this mindset that can we scale this product through the product itself.
Right.
If you look at Zerodha, if you look at Slack, if you look at Zoom, all these kind of, if you look at Intercom, all these products are product-led growth-driven products. So they don't really rely on advertising or other things. So one user on Zoom brings in another 10-20 users on Zoom. So that's the kind of product-led growth. So can you have that kind of product-led growth in the product that you're building or experiment that you're doing? So I always look at those kind of aspects while experimenting or building a new product, rather than thinking of let's solve a problem and just that, and then we will spend money on growing it. So I don't really believe in that process anymore. I mean, that sort of culture or mindset has changed for me now.
Very interesting. Ankit, you want to answer that?
Yep. So, just not really answer that, but to pick up one statement with Nitin said, and which you'll find common with any bootstrap startup, which is really focusing on the problem that we can solve, the value that we can add more than anything else. So you'll see this with a lot of bootstrap startup. We might lack with a lot of brand name or that kind of fancy image and etc. But we would be solving a core problem, and that's where we stand strong. We have a fundamental knowledge about customer, the problem that we're solving. We know nobody can solve this better than us. That's the reason we exist in the first place.
Interesting. Guys, what are some of the other key challenges that you faced in your journey, right? While you chose to sort of build it for the customer, and you've chosen to operate in a bootstrap manner, right? I know for a fact. I mean, this is something that we first discussed at a personal level. Both of you had opportunities, right? Of raising capital, right? I think, and there have been very bold calls that you've taken of not raising capital, right? For whatever reasons, right? But give me a sense of what are some of the other challenges that you faced in the journey, right? How big challenges? I mean, we discussed leadership, right? We've discussed decision making, we've discussed optimizing cash flows, right? What are possibly some other issues that you or challenges that you?
So one of it is, I believe, is you can't go for a crazy hiring spree.
Right.
You can't really afford to invest. What your competitors might be investing in the same kind of resources.
Sure.
You really have to convince the other guy to get on board, maybe at a less salary or maybe at a salary which is not, or other perks which fancy things that come along with the cultural and other foosball tables and other things. You can't obviously afford all those kind of things.
Right.
So that's a hard part, wherein if you want to hire a resource or if you want to invest, because people with great skills are going to be building great products, which eventually are going to help you scale up. But if you don't have that kind of capital in the beginning, then you really need your sales skill, or as a founder spirit or passion to convince more people, which is actually good also in a way, because then who really wanted to be a part of that journey, who really wanted to solve that problem with you, rather than really focusing on the other part. But that becomes somewhat of a challenge initially, when you don't have capital or when you don't really go for cash or funding, that area.
Again.
So, the challenges that we face in a bootstrap environment primarily is, recruiting best of the talent for the market, which Nitin even highlighted. It's difficult, to convince a lot of people that, because, often if you see in the market, the funding events are presented as a success story. Right. And more than anything, trust me, this making of funding stories as success stories is hurting bootstrap startups. Because what happens is, these stories are created, as a perception in the market that this becomes success. And definitely, best of the talent will always want to join startups which are successful rather than, which are seen not as a successful. And that's a foremost problem that we see. And apart from rest, I think this is the topmost thing that we have faced in general.
So I think just for the cosmetic reasons, should you go out and raise capital? Is that something that has crossed your mind?
Definitely, it helps. If you have that kind of perception or positive image as flouted by the media, it definitely helps you get more and more talent. And eventually, you need people to build a great product. So if you get and attract the right talent, you're going to win the market. So if it helps for cosmetic reasons, definitely that's one of the way to go forward.
And you choose not to go that route.
To me, as of now, it does not look like much of a problem, just for the sake of cosmetic reasons. But when the ship becomes large enough, when you obviously wanted to go ahead and even taper to more and more market or bring out more products that we need more talent to attract to, we might look at it. Why not?
Interesting, guys. We're towards the end of the conversation. Last two questions, right? One, what is when you are in a limited constraint environment, right? I've been there, right? I work with founders who build those businesses, right? I mean, I've seen Nitin very closely, right, in the process, right? In terms of how he built this entire journey, right? And of course, I've seen a lot of founders who've gone out and raised capital, right? Right, and the way they think, right? And it's completely different, right? There was a time when I never understood this. I said, you possibly get the product right, and then you get the money, and then you sort of scale it, right? But when you work in these environments, these are completely different environments, right? thinking of very different scale possibilities. You're thinking of a very, very different size of the team. The way you're solving the problem is very different, right? How important is creativity in the decision making, right? How important, or let me put it this way, right? How important is prioritization in when you are building an enterprise where you have limited resources, right? I know in some ways you answered this question earlier, but I specifically want to focus on the prioritization aspect, right? Nitin, I think is very clear, right? And when he says that, listen, I'm going for a very, very micro problem, my requirement of team is so much more little. Currently, I'm not, so for example, say expanding into a bunch of other products or whatever. And I think that's how he's prioritizing it. Ankit, how is it in your?
So prioritization and creativity, thinking, these are the two competencies that you need in a team. When you're limited with resources, it's primarily because you cannot do 10 things, which generally as a funded startup you would have leverage off. But you focus on important thing. What is my top priority right now? What is the core problem that if I solve, would be able to really scale things up?
Right.
Just to share an example, of our early days, when we launched the MVP and we were looking at the customer, there was competitor around, and we thought like, what is the one problem that we solve? If we solve, would make a wow factor for the customer.
Right.
And what we realized was, if we are able to create a system where clients can come and see the demo instantly without waiting, it's like you just sign up and see the demo. In telephony system, it's not that simple, to create an instant demo, but this became our problem statement, and we prioritized this over any other feature and tool, etc. But when we build this created this was clearly a USP for us, because when a customer, especially Indian B2B customers who do not have understanding of cloud system, come to our website and sign up, and they have the full experience instantly, that created a wow factor for the customer and helped us scale quickly. So it was just because we were able to prioritize this over a lot other things. We're able to prioritize on maybe a segment or a couple of problems that we think are bigger, rather than think. Though at the same time, as a MyOperator, we're not focusing on very niche, but if you see, fundamentally the problem that we are focusing is still prioritized. We're not focusing on probably 10 different things. We're focusing on a couple of things, which is like we believe it can go bigger, and it is like something which is significant and something which we can solve for millions of businesses.
Right. Nitin, in your case, I mean, an EasyLeadz happened, and it was a function of certain interactions that you had, right? And I think you were smart enough to understand that there was, a gap. It was more observational, right? You realized there was a gap, and then you went on and sort of did your research, and then you built a product on top of it. And I would say a lot of such things happen in our day-to-day life, right? As founders, as promoters, this is something that happens in our day-to-day life, right? How do you cultivate it at a DNA level, right? Will it always be the Nitin in your case, right? Given you're working with a small team and you're doing one product, right? Will it always be the Nitin in your game who's going to go on to find out that new product possibility? How do you build it at a DNA level, right? How do you establish champions in the process, right? In your case, and I want to specifically ask this to you because it's a smaller team that you're working with, right? What happens to the product roadmap, right? How does the evolution happen? Is just one person responsible for that entire process?
So, I mean, initially, yes, but the culture or DNA has now shifted to everybody. Because so I'll take one example. So recently RBI, have given instructions that the subscription-based payments cannot happen anymore, at least until the banks comply. So you can't charge customers on a recurring payment now.
Sure.
So that was the problem that we had, because our business model obviously relies on subscription-based payments, and suddenly your entire business model has to change. So so our support team person who looks after support, so she suggested that why don't we create some plans instead of 1 month and 12-month subscription validity plan, because obviously people can't afford to just go for 12-month or annual plans. We create 3-month and 6 months, quarter and 6-month plans as well, and also promote them and nudge them before even making before, for example, if a customer is paying for a month, you push the 3-month with some extra bonus or extra credits or extra discounting at that nudging point. So they suggested that, we implemented it right away, and now most of the customers who were actually had to churn off after 2 months are now giving us at least 3 months of revenue. So we in the process improved the ARPU also of the customer and solved the problem of having them coming back and forth and, pay again and every month. So that's the DNA, I would say, that has now everybody has resonated with, that they keep on giving us suggestions at all the levels. And it's not something which has happened, obviously, as you rightly said, from the day one. Now everyone have understood that this is what we are doing, and if we wanted to keep on doing it, we have to come up with solutions. So one of the other team members suggested that in the India market, we can't really afford to call everyone, because what happens is, if they are losing out on their validity, if we call them up, the next thing that the customer asks is, hey, can you help me increase my validity for free? Because if you're talking on phone with the customer, they will always going to demand more and more free services and stuff. So we always wanted to inform them up that their validity and everything is coming up, so we can't lose them in the process. And we also wanted to avoid of having a phone call with them. So what we implemented recently is WhatsApp integration. So because India, obviously everyone is on WhatsApp, so we implemented WhatsApp reminders. So every 7 days, 3 days, 2 days in advance, they get a WhatsApp reminder. SMS, they can always say that they have not got the SMS, it went to spam folder, or mail, it went to spam folder. But WhatsApp is something which obviously everyone receives. So that has improved our, I would say, on-time payment by up to 60% by just adding, WhatsApp reminders. So we always look at the current problem in hand, and that comes from all of it, especially from the support and sales team, because they are the ones who are interacting with the users every day, and they are the ones who bring in the problems that the user are facing, and we at a product level, we try and see what we can do to solve it.
Interesting. So it's a good partnership that you're saying. So there is a problem solving piece to it, and then there is a there is a future piece to it, right? In terms of what are the products that you build for the future and so on and so forth, right? Ankit, how easy or difficult is it to do in a large environment? Right? I mean, you have a large team, you have a 200+ people team, right? How easy or difficult is this for you to do?
Sure. So, doesn't matter what size, but, this whole culture thing, the innovation, thing, or sharing the responsibility, all these flows very top down. Right. So if you are able to replicate your culture with, say, initial set of 5-7 people, you trust me, this will be able to replicate even further down. There is a cascading effect altogether.
Right.
But at a bigger scale, it just comes with one problem, that you'll have to constantly look for people who are not, aligning better, who are not, kind of fitting into the whole system as a cultural fit, and you have to take calls around it. You want to build a team which is like really focused on the fundamentals that you're focusing on, maybe cultures, maybe values, maybe customer focus, etc. And you have to constantly do it with every team member, but the fundamentals remains the same.
Very interesting, guys. My second last question: your 3 inputs, advices to founders who are building right now, are optimizing their way through while they build, they acquire new customers. Your top 3 advices, and more importantly, how important is aspiration in the process, right? When you're especially going through a very, very difficult journey, right, where there is little hand holding which is available, right? It's a very, very tough and a competitive environment, right? And you are grappling with a lot of those challenges which are not necessarily very supportive. Yeah, your 3 advices.
So the first and foremost is that why do you want to start a startup? So I think a lot of people that I interact with, who reach out to me on LinkedIn, ask me on tips on scaling up or something like that. Sure. I've observed a pattern wherein a lot of people, they don't know why they want to do this, or so the aspiration kind of is interlinked with the reason of doing it, because passion comes from when you know what you actually want to do, and for the right reasons. Because if you're doing it just for the flashy PR, or just for because everybody else is doing it, you are tend to give up in the process, because you're not doing it for the right reasons. So if you know why you want to solve this problem, and you believe in that problem, the kind of aspiration and the passion will eventually come up, and will also give you push to keep on going every day. Because if you're not getting covered in media, after 10 days, 15 days, or a year, you will always believe that I'm not going anywhere, because that's the kind of benchmark you have for yourself, that a media coverage, or people calling you for speaker slots, is something that you believe in more, rather than believing in the product and the retention of the customers.
Right.
So you're going to give up if that's not happening. So the right reason is important that you should always look at. The other is focusing more on the core problem. So when prioritizing the core problem, we eventually have discussed this in the discussion, that why bootstrap founders Ankit and I are more, what we have more common is the core focus, and I would say very very hard focus on the problem, because we kind of go deep into it. Like we so if we are solving a problem, we wanted to become the only company that can solve the best. So if you do it, if 100 customers are adopting you in the beginning, that's okay. You don't really have to get to thousands of customers in day one. If you can make it 100 customers absolutely in love with what you do, you eventually are going to scale up without even advertising or any other expenditures, with the word of mouth that these 100 customers are going to give it for you. So the core focus should be on building a great product, rather than focusing more on acquiring customers, at least in the initial phase of the journey. So this is something that I would advise.
So, first point which Nitin said is actually the most relevant part here. See, building a business is a lifetime journey, if not at least a decade. And if you're not really aligned with the problem clearly, if you're not passionate about it, you probably, there are other reasons why you want to be an entrepreneur in the first place. You'll soon break out. You'll soon feel yourself losing from it. It's very important to understand that it's not it's a long commitment. It's a something you have to be really aligned with for a lot of years, and hence if you're not passionate about it, if you're not believing in it deep down itself, you'll not be able to sustain it. And that's not sustain as a financially something, but emotionally, the inner mind, the connect with the reason. All these are very important, and the four most important. But being said that, however, I think if you ask me a couple of advice, which I would say to any entrepreneur is, like, number one, focus on building a great team. I think that would matter more than anything else. Understand the customer as much as you can. You'd always realize, oh, the customer, but trust me, we all know after knowing it for years that we do not know. We still have a lot to learn there. It's one of the most complex problem, understanding the customers and their real need, their real problem. You have to keep peeling it layer by layer like an onion. Keep peeling it, and then you do this every year, you do this every time, and this is a long exercise again. And the last is be vocal about it. Especially being bootstrapped, you have to be vocal about it. You have to be keep telling about what is the problem that you're solving, why you're solving this, why it means you so much. And you see a lot of people getting aligned, and even maybe customers, even your team members, and when you're vocal about it, they join the journey, and it becomes a lot easier if you have a great team to really push forward the whole journey. That is it.
Interesting, guys. My last question, right? Bootstrapped always or an opportunist?
What was the question?
I'm saying bootstrapped always or an opportunist when it comes to taking capital.
So, I mean, yes, if there is a really amazing opportunity down the line, and we believe that that's the only thing that's stopping us from what we want to do, then yes, we would definitely go forward with it. It's more about the DNA that even if we raise funds, I think we're going to be, having that kind of mindset to have that kind of creativity when we build things, and rationalizing every problem, understanding why we wanted to solve this problem. So those kind of DNA will always be there, even if we have buttloads of money to push forward and advertise. But the focus should always be on the kind of DNA that bootstrapping always helps you build a sustainable business model. And if we raise money in the future, yes, definitely, why not?
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I actually will go with Nitin. See, it's about we understand this is a problem with customers, and it's a huge base of customers whom we're solving it for. And if you think money is the only blocker, and sometimes it would immediately help us accelerate faster, we're in a right place, right time kind of situation, I think we should go for it. And for me personally, I would definitely I'm actually in the process of talking to a few investors, because I think this whole digitization thing, this whole 2020 thing, has put this SMB adoption of digital things in a very different orbit,
Right.
and it is a great
Right.
time for us to be able to scale to probably 1 million of businesses now.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time out. It was lovely having the two of you with us. I think a lot of things that you've highlighted, resonate so well with me. I mean, having looked at your journeys, it's as I said right at the start, right? I think it's heartening to see where you've come. And I think, like you said, I think DNA is the most important thing. I think setting up that foundation, calibrating, what is required, optimizing your processes, uh, building the right kind of value and culture, and I think ensuring that people are essentially staying with you because of those two or three components, and not necessarily running away or switching ships because there's a better opportunity. Retaining a lot of that, and simultaneously making them a stakeholder in the process, right? It's been a fantastic discussion. I think some of these points that you've highlighted to the course of the conversation are very, very critical. And I think these are things that not just, for example, say bootstrap founders, but I think founders across the board should imbibe and look at. I think these are facts. One thing I personally, which I believe that I think every founder should do, while they do that in their personal capacities, is to be a little more bold, right? I think they have to be a little more vocal in terms of what they're building, and not necessarily worry about how they're being evaluated by public at large, right? Because there's a lot of confrontation that happens. There's a lot of negativity which happens when there is a fund startup which goes on to burn a lot of capital. They're chasing different demons, right? They're chasing different targets, right? And they have their own complexities around it, right? But thank you so much for the two of you to be being here, joining us for a fantastic discussion. It was a pleasure to work with you. All the best for your journeys and future ahead.
Thank you, Ashu.
Thanks, Ashu. Thanks for having us here. It's really wonderful, discussion. And after a long time, we three, having this kind of discussion, I think this was amazing. Thanks a lot.